Hi everybody. This is my first YouTube video. For the past few months I've been watching a lot of different people on here about Jesus. I'm very interested in the dreams because I've had a lot of dreams. I live in a small town and basically I really don't have anybody to talk to except for my husband. And I think I probably drive him nuts because I'm always talking to him. But anyway, I've thought a long time about whether I should put anything on and been praying on it. And I thought, as long as if it's not going to hurt anybody and it's something good, then we need to share it. So I just thought I'd come on first of all today and just basically tell you my, basically just my testimony. I'll start with that, and then later I can add some dreams that I've had recently and in the recent past. So, all right, here goes. I'm 47, and it was probably 26 years ago. I was just getting ready to get married. Me and my husband were planning our wedding, and I lived at home. I had a little, my dad built me a space downstairs so I could have some privacy. And I have an older brother and sister, and then I have a younger brother that I was really close to. Him and I were like allies to each other because we had a rough childhood growing up. My mom was pretty hard on us, so we had each other. The older siblings didn't really get too much of it, but Ted and I did. We got a lot of it. So he protected me, I protected him. And one night, doesn't matter about the circumstances, but one night when I got ready to go to bed, I walked downstairs and I was going to tell him that it was okay and that I would talk to him tomorrow because my mom had just got done yelling at him. And I thought, no, I'll wait till tomorrow and I'll talk to him tomorrow. And 10 minutes later, he was dead. It had been ruled a suicide. He was just in the next room from me. It was a basement, so half of the basement was still like a workshop that my dad had. And the other part was my bedroom and a little kitchen and stuff. Needless to say, growing up in a small town and in the country, I never thought anything like this would happen to me. I thought this stuff only happened on TV. And it really threw me for a loop. I went in, I was the first one there, and I knew he was gone. And anyways, things progressed, and we went ahead and got married, even though, we had talked about postponing it because of everything. But we went ahead and had the wedding. Life went on. And I started experiencing really bad nightmares. I'd never seen anything like this before. And so I had the nightmares. I'd wake up screaming. I was so afraid my family was going to fall apart. So I thought maybe if I just had a baby, then that would fill that hole that my brother left. And so I tried and tried. Of course, I gained a lot of weight through my grief. I started eating. He died in February. In the following January, almost a year after his death, something really unique happened to me. Now, before this, mind you, I never gave God a thought. Never thought about him, never asked him into my life. I was young. I was 22 years old. I was doing my own thing, wanted to get married, go on. And this is just how amazing God is. I went to bed that night. Brian and I had our matching Christmas pajamas that we got for Christmas that year. And I woke up. Now, to me, this was just absolutely real. This was not a dream. This was real. This is how I felt. I woke up, and I remember sitting on the end of the bed. I was going to wake my husband up because after that happened, I began to be afraid of the dark. And then I thought, as I looked at him, I thought, no, Rhonda, you're being silly. You can go to the bathroom by yourself. So I got up and I walked into the bathroom. But when I went to walk in, everything was different. And for some reason, I wasn't afraid. But when I looked in, the whole room was clear, and it had this odd glow to it. And I saw my brother laying on a cot back against the wall. All of a sudden, I got so excited. I had all these questions I wanted to ask him. Where do you go when you die? Where are you at? What are you doing? So I went over and I stood by him. He had the same clothes on that he died in. A green army jacket, jeans, everything. As I stood there looking down at him, waiting for him to wake up, he suddenly reached up and he grabbed my wrist, my left wrist. Now, he never moved his lips, but we could speak to each other. We knew what each other's thoughts were. And he looked at me and he said, "Rhonda, I cannot tell you anything. You must wait." And I didn't argue. I was like, okay. So I backed up so that he could stand up. And when he stood up, I noticed that he had the pictures I'd given him. Now, at his funeral, I'd put 4 pictures on his chest of us kids and a single red rose. So when he stood up, I grabbed the pictures out of his coat pocket and I said, "Oh, you still have those pictures I gave you?" I started flipping through them. But I didn't recognize this last child. When I got to the last picture, I kept looking at it, and I looked at him and I said, "This isn't you, it isn't me. Who's this baby?" Now, as I told you earlier, I'd been trying for 7 months to get pregnant, and I just couldn't. And this baby looked really small for its age, like a preemie baby, but he was crawling. And Ted looked down at me and he just grinned. He was one of these kids that had this grin that he always gave us. And he said, "You'll find out soon enough." So I was like, all right, didn't think too much of it. He then grabbed my hand and walked me over to a set of steps that went to the bathroom. And he said, "Now I know you have a question to ask me, so ask me." And we sat down and I said, "Oh, Ted, did you mean to do that? Did you mean to kill yourself?" He rubbed his hands over his face like this. He gave a big sigh and he shook his head and he said, "Rhonda, I honestly did not mean for that to happen." He said, "Do you forgive me?" And I said, "Well, of course I forgive you. I love you." And he said, "I love you too." And he said, "Now I got a question to ask you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Why did you scream at me?" Now he showed me everything that I had done that night that I didn't even realize I had done. He showed me what I did, my hand motions, everything. And I said, "Well, I knew you were gone, and it scared me. I knew there was nothing I could do." And then he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, who was standing behind me?" He said, "I could feel their hands on me shaking, but I couldn't see who it was." And I said, "That was Alan, our older brother." I said, he did. He had come in, walked around Ted to the back of him, and had checked his neck for a pulse. And I said, "That was Alan." He goes, "Oh, okay. It's like he didn't understand." And then once he had his questions answered, he understood. He stood up and he gave me a hug. And then I saw him just kind of glide across the room. He didn't walk, he glided across the room until he came up against just a regular bedroom door. When I looked up at him, he had the pictures back in his pocket, and in his other hand he held a single red rose. And he also held a poem that I had written him and left it at his grave. And he looked at me and he said, "Rhonda, now that I have your forgiveness, it's time for me to go home." He said, "I won't see you again." And I was like, okay. And then when I watched, this whitest, brightest light I'd ever seen, and I'll probably never see it again until I go to heaven, started filtering in around the door around him. This light got brighter and brighter, and I watched as long as I could because I didn't want him to leave. Until finally my eyes literally burned and tears were just running down my face. And this light just totally enveloped him, and then he was gone. And when I closed my eyes because of the pain, all of a sudden I felt myself in my room. Like, it was a weird feeling, like I was coming back into my body, because I know now that I was in my spirit. It felt like somebody put a hose up against my chest and turned on a blast of cold water. I remember gasping as I sat up, just like you would if you were put back in your body. It took me 3 days to talk about this. I finally found out that I got pregnant that very month. And our oldest son was born at 24 weeks. I went into premature labor. And he was only 1 pound, 8 ounces. He dropped down to 15 ounces. He spent 3 months in Children's Hospital in Buffalo. And the doctors, when we first went in there, when I was taken by ambulance, when I first went in there, the doctor asked me and my husband, "Do you want us to even try to save this baby?" Now, if I hadn't had this dream, I would have listened to the doctor and would have done what he wanted me to do. But I said, "Yeah, of course, he's going to be fine. We've seen him. He's going to be fine." And I remember the doctor gave such a look of pity. But Brian did survive. He was one of the smallest males to ever survive. Came through that with not one ill effect. The only thing that happened was he had to wear glasses because of the oxygen. And so anyways, after that, it was a shame, but seeing what God did for me, I still kind of went my own way. And I ended up having anxiety, panic attacks, because me and my mom went into a horrible relationship. I mean, it wasn't real good before, but after this, she became really dominating over my son. She just wanted to do everything. It was a hard time, but anyway, so I spent a lot of years in anxiety and panic attacks, and fighting with my mom, trying to get along. It was so hard for so long. But God, again, came in on the scene, and it was in 2008. I walked through my living room. Now, I had a Bible in my living room in my house, just like everybody does. I never planned on reading it. I thought it was the most boring book ever written. I didn't plan on reading it, but it looked good sitting in the living room. And I don't know what happened, but God either woke me up or literally hit me over the head that day. But I started to have this intense hunger for God. It was crazy. Now, you got to understand, before this, when I was going through anxiety for 12 years, all I did was read romance books because it helped me to escape to another world. I read all the time. It caused problems within a husband. But that was my safety net. After that day, when God did that, I never touched another book. All I could do was read. I wanted to know everything about God. I wanted to find out what this hunger was. I mean, what was happening to me? I started watching TV. I kind of connected with Joyce Myers, and I started buying all her books, how to talk to God, how to pray to God. You name it, I bought it. And one thing I found out was that God just wants a relationship with us. So I was like, all right, I can do this. I'm very good at talking. So I would go outside. When you go through my kitchen, there's a patio out there. And there's a little bench. So I started going outside every day, and I decided to start this relationship. I'd go out with a cup of coffee, and I felt pretty stupid at first. I'd look around, but every day it got easier and easier. And then pretty soon I was out there talking to him about everything. And then one Sunday, I don't know why this happened, and I was still so young, in Christ, I didn't know anything. I walked out to my kitchen to make breakfast, and I have a double window in my kitchen, and the window sits right over the bench where I always sat. I saw this ball of light shoot past this one window. It looked like a ball of fire. It was all golden fire, and it just shot past my window like lightning. And I remember jumping, but before I could turn and run out of the room, on the other side of that window was an angel. A real, live, honest-to-God angel. He had brown hair to here, and it kind of feathered back. He had a yellow arc over his head. The robe with everything. And he had these eyes that I knew he could see right through to my soul. I knew there was nothing I could hide from him. And he just walked by that window, and it was like time stopped. And he just stared at me, and I just stared at him. Never said anything. And it was just the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. And I remember telling my husband, because I thought, well, maybe I'm going to die. Maybe this angel's coming to get me. But anyways, I can't draw to save my life. So I spent weeks after that trying to look pictures up online to see if I could find anything that looked like this angel I saw. So that was the beginning of my relationship with God. It was pretty cool. And video's getting a little long, so I'll make some more. But that's my testimony. That's what happened. And of course, after that, I started going to prayer group, and I just haven't stopped yet. I've been running to Jesus. I am in love with Him, and through these past years, He has healed me of my relationship with my family, my children. I don't know. It's just unbelievable. I just hope maybe this will help somebody, and that's it. I'll tape some more at a later time. I wanted to just send this out for now and test drive it. So God bless you all, and I pray if there's anything I can do for anybody, let me know. All right, thank you.